yesterday, for example, the internet interruption. We debated it for half an hour in a program called Mawara al-Khabar, or Inside Story. It was the topic. And we tried to explain to the audience why the internet has become a very essential part, a very essential component of our economy in the region. Everyone was affected. We couldn't make phone calls to our correspondents around the world. Even to transfer money to the bureaus outside the country was very, very difficult for us. We had to go through Western Union. It was very costly, by the way. So it's affecting everyone. So we've got to accept the fact that any topic, any subject can be debated, even that. But is for example, the question of homosexuality, is it a priority for us to talk about now? I will put it for debate. We talked about the ethics of cloning, and it was some of the journalists raised the fact that if cloning advances enough, then maybe one day we will be able to clone Adolf Hitler and bring too much evil to the world back again. So it's a matter of anything can be debated, anything can be talked about. Even Sheikh Qardawi, as I said before, talked about
has a religious program on Al Jazeera. No barriers. Okay. Question up here. Question from the gentleman who hopefully has got his microphone working now. And we'll have a question from the lady there.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm Alex Abutu from Nigeria. Editor-in-Chief, you talked about absence of science journalists in your organization. But looking at Al Jazeera, a big organization like that, what effort are you making to train this crop of journalists that will be able to report science in your organization? Thank you.
We'll take 3 questions at a time, please.
Musa Khair from Sudan. Right now, I think there is less demand for science journalists in the world. At the same time, you find high demand for journalists working to cover hot issues, for example, like wars. In wars, for example, we find doctors, we find frontline reporters. So why not science journalists to report on that, to report on health, environment issues, so as to convince the warring factions to stop wars? So Al Jazeera, I think, can start this initiative. I do think the problem is of science journalism is limited jobs opportunity and less payment and limited training opportunities. Other than this training that was undergoing by the World Federation of Science Journalists. So I think if there is initiative to cover these 3 points, I think we're going to find a way out for developing science journalism in the world.
Good. Thank you for that observation. We have a lady here, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Esther Nakazi from Uganda. We heard earlier today from many of the speakers from Qatar Foundation that they are committed to funding research. My question is to the editor. Funding science research. I believe that Al Jazeera, as a medium that is international, you will have a lot of information on science after the research has been funded, and you may have to commit yourself to change. You have talked about being in a region where there's continuous breaking news, and we appreciate that. But I wonder, will you be able to change your way of working after the research funding spurs a lot of science news in the region, in your country?
Please press the...
The first question was whether we have any training facility for... We have a training center. It's almost now 5 years old, and we are building a big facility for training, and we are investing in that field, and I think in the future training science journalists will be on our agenda. But you've got to find, as I said before, people who have the qualifications, who have the right caliber. If you can find a doctor, for example, Reuters has a health section. And this health section is run by doctors, doctors turned journalists. I don't think we have reached this stage in the Arab world or in the third world countries where doctors would really turn to become journalists, a doctor turned journalist. If we can find a doctor turned journalist this day, he will get, tomorrow,
Right.
he will get...
Hands up, doctors turn journalists, or scientists
He will get a
journalists
job
in the audience who
the
working
day
in the Middle
after
East.
tomorrow.
Okay, okay.
Do you have any?
I'm sure Mr. El-Sheikh, Ahmed will be taking job applications at the end of today's session.
We need those people. We are ready to employ them, to give them the resources enough to cover that. And we were looking for them. And as I said before, we went to Hamad Hospital and we said, we were trying to launch an effective health program. We talked to Dr. Tawil, many of them, and no one came forward to help us with it. It's a problem. If you approach any Arab university, I'll just tell you this story. We were, last year we tried to highlight the problems of education in the Arab world. And we took two examples, Jordan and Egypt. And the journalists in the Cairo office went to the Ministry of Education in Egypt and we said, we want to go and shoot some pictures of your schools, the government schools. And they refused. We were ejected out of the classroom in Jordan and in Egypt. They didn't want us to go there and show that 50 or up to 60 pupils are crammed in a single room. So there is a resistance on the part of the government itself. They don't want to expose themselves to the outside world. They don't want to be forthcoming, to be transparent. So,
and yet, Ahmed, in science and technology, this is one area where governments actually do want to showcase what they're doing.
Yeah,
in fact, there's more talk than there is actually active research. So,
more talk. Yeah. It is easier said than done, I think. If we interviewed and we hosted Dr. Zuwail, and we were talking about producing a program. And then he's too busy even in the States to find some time to give to us. And we were just calling him every other day, what happened? And Dr. Zuwail is very, very busy. So if you can get hold of someone like Dr. Zuwail, this is a treasure that you will expose to the world. It will be an example to the rest of us. If we can give those people like Dr. Zuwail, Dr. Al-Baz, etc., those big names in science world, and we interview them by the time, every now and then. If you give them enough time, I think that would be very helpful. I don't know
I think we'll just continue here. Khalid, I have a question for you. Do you find that there is a generational difference now between scientists and doctors, that an older generation is not so comfortable talking to journalists, but a younger generation, and I include you in their number, are more willing? Younger, up and coming.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a generational shift, definitely, in terms of the scientists being willing to talk about their science and advertise it. And like I said before, I think for the scientists themselves, it's critical at this point to advertise your science. And it's very helpful for any scientist to do that. The other point that came up in the discussion before is a lot of people said science is difficult. It's not. I disagree with that statement. If you as a journalist can't make it simple enough, let the scientist you're interviewing do it for you before you go out and advertise your story. Anything can be simplified easily to make it attractive to the public, to the lay people, to understand it. I mean, any science that's being done has applications, and that's why we do it, that's why we get money to do it by governments and funding agencies and so on. So, you know, I really don't see a disconnect between scientists and journalists. I think, you know, if they work as a team, it's for the benefit to both, because advertising your science is very beneficial to any scientist.
I think we have a question here, and then gentleman up there. And a third.
I'm Nadia Al-Awadi. I'm a science journalist. I'm the president of the Arab Science Journalists Association. I had two comments. I want to agree with you on one thing and to disagree with you on another, Mr. Ahmed Al-Sheikh. I want to agree with you on the